Hey everyone, Morgan Knox here. I wanted to show you guys a tutorial of an exercise that I was running through earlier. So this is a marketing exercise where we were going through the process of identifying a client avatar. This is an archetype of the type of person that you as a business sell to routinely. I was going through an exercise with a handful of contractors earlier where we went through the process of identifying and creating a detailed client avatar or client archetype so that we could create some really powerful targeted marketing messages directed towards that client archetype. I'd like to walk you guys through the first part of this series, which was the process of using an AI tool to build out that client archetype. So I'm going to show you guys a little bit of a template that we were working off of. So I'm going to go ahead and move this around. So there's several phases to this exercise that we're working our way through. So a quick highlight. We want to start off by building a really thorough profile of our client avatar, because what we want to do is work through really effective copywriting exercises in all of our marketing messages. So the reasoning behind this is that every time that you are spending money on any kind of marketing or advertising spend, we want you to have as much leverage as possible while you're spending that money. We want to make sure that dollar is getting you as far as possible. So what we're operating on here is a philosophy that's really consistent with best practices in the professional marketing sphere, which is the idea that we really want to target our marketing messages as specifically as possible to a particular type of customer. Because the more specific you're targeting your messaging, the more persuasive and the more motivating that message is going to be. So something that's really common in the contracting space for marketing is kind of what we call a shotgun blast approach. So we like to send out mass blasts, whether it's direct mail, whether it's email, whether it's Facebook posts or Facebook and Google ads that talk about us. They talk about who we are as a business, all of the services that we offer, and they're usually using something like a discount to try to incentivize people to buy. So that's our attention builder and what we're trying to use as a closer. Massive discount, seasonal thing, whatever price that we're trying to push out. This is really normal. It's what is really typical in the contracting space, but unfortunately, it's a pretty poor example of effective messaging and really good marketing. So what I want to do here is turn that on its head. Instead of casting a really giant net where we're talking about us as a business and all of the things that we do, I want to get really specific to a specific customer, talking about them, their life, what's important to them, and how we can deliver on what's important to them. So the rule of thumb and what I'm fond of saying is that everyone who's your customer, nobody cares about you. They only care about themselves. So we really need to make sure that all of our messages are framed with that in mind. So in order to make really powerful, persuasive messages, we need to know who we're talking to. And like I mentioned before, it's really common that you probably have a handful or different types of client archetypes or avatars that you work with in your business, but you've probably seen some trends. So for example, in the home services space, it's pretty common for us to, you're working with homeowners almost certainly, unless you're working with a commercial type of client. So let's focus on homeowners first. Homeowners tend to fall into a few different generational categories. So maybe you have a baby boomer homeowner, maybe you have a Gen Xer, maybe you have some millennial homeowners. We're not seeing a whole bunch of Gen Zer homeowners just yet. So we're going to focus on those millennials, those Gen Xers, and those baby boomers. In those three different generational categories, you have different types of professions. You have people who are in different phases of their life. You have people who have different values, different fears based on what's going on in their lives. And depending on your area and what kind of service that you're focused on, you're probably engaging with some of these different demographics more than others. So maybe you're targeting specific types of neighborhoods, higher end homes. So these tend to be professionals in certain career fields that tend to live in those homes. They have certain household incomes. They're probably in a certain age group. There's a lot of different details that you can extrapolate about these groups of people that are going to make your messages towards them significantly more effective. And this is something that an AI tool is really powerful at helping you with. So whenever we were going through this exercise as a group, I'm going to go ahead and scroll on up here and walk you guys through some of the different prompts that we ran this through so you guys can see the thought process. So most of you probably have a pretty good idea about who you're working with consistently or who your ideal customer is. So another way you can think about this exercise is Who's the favorite customer that you've ever had? That if you could turn every customer into that customer, who would it be? What was their name? How old were they? Why was it that they were calling you to work for them? What kind of project were you doing for them? What made them such a great customer? And what made you a really good fit for them as a customer? That's a really great place to start. And then when we have some beginning details, we can use something like this AI tool. In this case, I'm using ChatSonic, which is like an analog of ChatGPT or Jasper on the Right Sonic platform. We can use an open-ended tool like this to help us create more information to make even better messages that are going to be really persuasive and really compelling to this client avatar. But let's just say that you don't really know who it is that's buying for you in a business. Maybe you're doing this for a business that you haven't fully jumped into yet. You can even ask the tool for some information about this. So these tools are really great for research. I started off by asking this, who's the main customer for buying residential painting projects? I was using painting businesses, commercial paint or residential painting as an example. So it gave me a fairly vague answer. Purchased by homeowners and property managers, referrals are the best leads, and it even cited some references, which is cool, but not exactly what I was looking for. So I know that I'm usually dealing with homeowners if I'm selling a residential painting project. So then I asked, when homeowners are making a decision about a service for their home, is the husband or the wife the main decision maker? Men and women tend to have fairly different personalities, and they're a pretty different character avatar or client avatar when we're thinking about building messages. So I wanted to get some guidance on whether I should be focusing on men or women preferentially. This is something that, just so you guys know, the majority of consumer behavior research shows that across all spending categories, women are the predominant decision maker for about 80 to 90% of all purchasing decisions. So out of everything that households are buying and spending on a routine basis, it's estimated that women are making 80 to 90% of the calls on what they buy and who they buy it from. Now, a couple of notable exceptions to that: things in the mechanic space like car maintenance and repairs, and some things revolving around home services tend to have a little bit more of an even-keeled approach between men and women. But if in the as contractors and home service contractors, it's still a pretty safe bet that women are going to be one of the main, if not the main, client avatar that you're going to be working with routinely. So it's never a bad bet to structure some messaging pretty specifically targeted towards the women homeowners in whatever category you're targeting. Okay. So I asked it a question about that, and it gave me a pretty good even keeled answer about how husband and wife are usually the main decision makers together. Usually the husband is going to be primarily responsible for financial aspects of the service. Wife is usually more involved in aesthetic aspects of the service and making sure that the project is done to their satisfaction. So that's a pretty key piece there. The wife is the one who definitely you need to get some really solid buy-in from on that. But it is important to take both partners into account. So that's good. Good feedback from the bot there on that. If I didn't really know where to start, that's a good one to start. I started thinking a little bit about customers that I know are routine for a painting contracting business. And so I started thinking about suburban middle class America, which makes up the majority of homes in a lot of the service regions that the painting contractors that I work with are based out of. So I started thinking a little bit about this client avatar. And in my mind, I called her Sabrina Soccer Mom. Sabrina Soccer Mom is probably in her late 30s into her 40s. Her kids are probably in that preteen to teenage range. Maybe she's a stay-at-home mom, or maybe she's a professional. I had an example that I put together here. So I had a template, and on the top here, I just filled in some information. So I'm making up a character in my mind that represents a broader client avatar that we're selling to. So Sabrina Soccer Mom, she's 38. She works from home. She has a customer service job. Okay. So those are the three pieces of detail that I started with. So I came over here to my writing tool. And as you can see from my template, I have a series of things that I want to find out about Sabrina while I'm building this client avatar. I want to find out what she likes. I want to find out what she dislikes. I want to find out what her hopes are, what her dreams are, because those are things that are really important for communicating authentically with someone to make them feel like they're really being understood and they're really being listened to. I like to have some detail about her age. Really, what we're primarily interested in here is the generational demographic, because as people hit different life turning points, different milestones in life, their needs and their desires change. Okay. And then finally, I like to summarize these as how would this avatar describe themselves in the first person? Because that messaging is going to be really important whenever we're trying to create some different advertising or content that's going to be related to them. So, for all of this information, likes, dislikes, hopes, fears, and values, I turned to the AI tool. Quick distinction here, a question that popped up quite a bit. What's the difference between hopes, fears, and values versus likes and dislikes? These things are really closely aligned, but in my opinion, likes and dislikes are the sort of thing that somebody might answer if you asked them, what do you like or dislike about working with a certain type of professional, or what do you like or dislike about certain products or services? They're the things that people are going to be able to tell you pretty. I really like whenever someone's professional and when they're on time. However, those hopes and fears and values are going to be much more deep rooted parts of that person. The likes and dislikes are going to be reflections of hopes, fears, and values of a person. But someone's hopes and fears and values might be something that they don't fully articulate to you. They might not always express them. These are really at the heart of people that you would have to have an intimate relationship with them to really know what those things are. But there are a lot of commonalities and consistencies between different groups of people. So we can really extrapolate and identify a lot of that information about people. So I'll show you some examples. So in here, I wanted to start off with values. Value statements are a really, really critical part of being able to communicate effectively with people, expressing that you're aligned in values. You as a business are aligned with their values as an individual. So I know that Sabrina Soccer Mom, the archetype that I'm interested in learning more about, she's a middle-class suburban mom in her 30s and 40s. So I asked the bot, what are the major values of middle-class suburban moms in their 30s and 40s? And it gave me a pretty good explanation. They like to be seen as individuals. They prioritize safety and security and stability for their families. Education is important. They want their children to have the best opportunities. They value hard work and responsibility, and they like having a sense of autonomy of what's going on in their lives. They're family oriented. They place a great deal of importance on quality time with their children and their spouses. And then finally, might express a sense of duty to their communities, involving themselves in activities that'll benefit those around them. So all of these value expressions, at first glance, they're not directly related to selling a service. But I think that you can see how you as a business or you as a professional can communicate really directly to these values whenever you're creating marketing or selling statements, or you're expressing how you as an organization espouse the same values. If you're aligned in values with the customers that you're communicating with, you're making it significantly easier for them to feel encouraged and motivated to buy from you, because interacting with you and supporting you in the same values that they have is consistent with their identity and how they see themselves. So you're making it easier for them to get over any hiccups or hurdles that they might have when it comes to buying from you. So several of the elements here are really easy to tie into product or service sales. Things like they value hard work, responsibility. Those are things that you can espouse as a business, and they're supporting you in that as a local small business. They place a great deal of importance on spending quality time with their children and their spouses. That's a really great justification for hiring a professional service for something that they otherwise might be able to do for themselves, because you can present a choice. They can try to DIY everything around their home, or they can let a professional take care of it for them so they can enjoy the quality time with kids or with their spouses. One of the things that I like to bring up when it comes to powerful marketing messaging towards moms is something about how tiny hands only stay tiny for so long. It's a really poignant reminder that you have precious moments that are passing you by, and you want to be really thoughtful about how you spend every minute. So making an investment and letting someone else take care of home chores for you can actually be a great way in investing and spending time with your family. A sense of duty to their communities. If you run any kind of charitable projects, that's a really great value that you can bring up and really lean into, knowing that it's going to resonate with this client avatar. So what I did here is I want to make it a little bit faster and more efficient for me to keep interacting with and engaging with the bot here. I asked about the major values of middle-class suburban moms in their 30s and 40s, and it gave me some really good feedback. And just so you guys know, this tool does have self-referential memory. So I made sure that memory was enabled here so that I could teach and train this tool as I'm continuing to interact with it. And it's going to get more efficient, giving me the outputs that I need. So then I give it a name. Sabrina is a middle-class suburban mom whose values were just described. What is important to her when it comes to making purchasing decisions around her home? So what I'm doing here is I'm giving it the avatar of Sabrina. I'm telling it what Sabrina is, what Sabrina values, and I'm asking it to give me more information about Sabrina. So it gives me more information about what she likes about purchasing decisions around her home. So then I ask, what does she dislike when it comes to making purchasing decisions around her home? And it gives me good feedback. If at any point it gave me feedback that I didn't like or that I didn't think was accurate, I can tell it to modify it. I can tell it to adjust it. I can say, rewrite this and make this brief, or rewrite this to focus on something in particular. And it'll keep building this into its memory. So you'll see right here, it gave me 5 points. And I said, go ahead and summarize that into 2 sentences. So here we go. It summarized it. Sabrina values safety, reliability, and value for money when making purchasing decisions around her home. She dislikes decisions based solely on price and those that are made without doing any research. She doesn't like pressure from companies to make a purchase, and she wants companies with ethical and sustainable practices. Good. So right here in the exercise, I actually swapped to another client avatar because I was doing an exercise with a contractor. So now we swap to Ashley. Ashley is a very similar client avatar to Sabrina, so bear with me while we kind of change tracks here. You'll see that I redefine a different client avatar. So I say Ashley is a stay-at-home mom in her 40s. Her kids are in their teens. Her household income is $150,000 to $200,000 a year, and her husband is a sales executive. So I'm painting a picture of her as a person and the dynamic that she lives in, which is going to tell us a lot about who she is or what her demographics usually are. And I asked the bot, what are Ashley's values as they would be important for a marketer to consider when selling to her? So I'm changing the inputs a little bit here to try to get a little more pointed since I know we're working on marketing messaging. So this was a really powerful prompt. It gave me some really good feedback. She values safety, security, comfort for her family. She's committed to quality and excellence. She wants to make sure products are long lasting and reliable. She's looking for value for money. So you can see that this is very echoing and reminiscent of when we were talking about the Sabrina avatar. So then I asked, what does Ashley like and look for when she's making a purchasing decision? And again, it gave me some similar input. As I am creating these inputs, I am saving them on my client avatar template here, right? So I'm trying to collect this information because this information is consistent and good for building a lot of different types of marketing messages targeted towards a character like Sabrina or a character like Ashley. Okay. So I want to make sure I'm collecting this information because I'm going to refer back to it when we get into the point of actually creating marketing content or creating messages for different types of marketing campaigns. So I'm going to jump back over here. In here within the prompts, I get a little bit more creative and I say, actually, what I'm trying to identify is what's important to her. What does she value when it comes to choosing a professional to work with? Because that's what we do. We sell professional services. So I changed the prompt here to what's important to Ashley when she's choosing a professional to work with. Now the output is a little more specific to my use case. So I like this a little bit more. In the future, I'd probably start when it comes to after the values, finding out about Ashley's values, and maybe her hopes and her fears. When it comes to her likes and dislikes, I'd probably focus on likes and dislikes or what's important when she's choosing a professional because that's a little more specific to our use case. She values communication, reliability, trustworthiness, and honesty. She's also looking for someone who understands her needs and is willing to work with her to find the best. So that's telling you right there, those are all of the notes that you need to communicate to really effectively to appeal to the Ashleys of the world. So this is where we get really deep. I want to get deep at the heart of who Ashley is as a person and what is important to her so that we feel like we have a genuine connection whenever we're talking and communicating with her as a customer. What are Ashley's deep-seated hopes that she may not even be aware of? Again, these are those things that are deeply rooted in people. They might not tell you them if you ask them outright, but they're really at the heart of why people make the decisions that they make. And we want to make sure that we're poking those emotional buttons whenever we're trying to be really compelling or persuasive. Ashley hopes for a better future for herself and her family. She may also have hopes for a life that's balanced and meaningful, where she can have time to do the things she loves, such as spending time with family, traveling, learning new skills. So we have this reference back to how we spend time. There's a really great amount of messaging that you can lean into about how we invest time and how we spend time. And you can bet that that's going to be pretty compelling to this market. She has hopes for making a difference in the world and helping those in need, maybe being part of a greater movement. Similar, what are Ashley's deep rooted fears, even those she may not be aware of? She has a fear of failure, of not living up to her own potential, of not being able to provide for her family. She might have a fear of being judged or criticized, or not being good enough, or not being accepted by others. She has a fear of being vulnerable and a fear of the unknown. So, those are all notes that you can tell. Those are elements that people are going to shy away from. So, those might be fears that you need to address whenever you are marketing to someone. You need to make sure that you are not unknown because she might be fearful of that. You need to let her know that it's totally safe to work with you because she does not like being vulnerable or feelings of not being safe. You need to align the fact that working with you and hiring you as a professional to take care of her home is the best way of providing for her family and living up to her potential as a mom and a homemaker. Those are really powerful, persuasive elements. So finally, I ask, how would she describe herself so that I can get a nice little summary statement in there in the first person in my summary? I pasted the client avatar in here for another quick little summary that the bot gave me. And then I moved into an exercise more focused on identifying content that this avatar would be interested in. So that next phase, how we're going to use this avatar to create really powerful, persuasive marketing messages, is going to be another video and another tutorial. But in the meantime, I did want to share this little bit of content with you guys about how you can use an AI tool to build a really compelling, really detailed client avatar, and encourage you to go through this exercise for the main client avatar that you find yourself working with, or at least the first one that you want to focus on, and then continue with this exercise. You probably have a handful of avatars that you're selling to routinely, whether they are property managers that have different kind of hopes and fears and dreams and likes and dislikes as they relate to being a professional buyer, a B2B buyer, whether they're the man in the household, whether they are an elderly couple that has particular, like an elderly man who has particular concerns with his stage of life and things like that when it comes to scheduling services. So there's a lot of power in getting very granular and very specific about who you're talking to so that you can talk to them and motivate them more effectively than ever. Thanks for joining, guys.